I uncovered a haunted portrait of a princess so cursed it drove Henry VIII to madness. I never should have opened that door. I was just cleaning up the attic, going through boxes of my late grandmother's belongings when I stumbled across it. A heavy wooden frame, ornate and gilded, dust covering the glass. The air felt thicker around it, almost choking. I picked it up, my fingers trembling. The portrait depicted a striking young woman draped in rich velvet. Her eyes seemed to follow me, piercing and alive. I felt a chill sweeping through the attic, the kind that sinks into your bones and makes your skin crawl. There was something unsettling about her smile. It didn't seem real. A whisper seemed to slide through the air, soft but laced with malice. The shadows flickered in the dark corners of the attic as I lifted the frame. It felt heavy, despite its size. I glanced around, the old wood creaking under my weight. Dust motes danced in the pale, slanting light from the window. Everything seemed still, too still. My heart raced. Strange sounds resonated like whispers caught on the wind. It was as if the attic itself was alive, watching, waiting. Objects shifted slightly in my peripheral vision. A box toppled over, spilling out old trinkets. I jumped. My chest was tight, as if a vice were squeezing me. Somehow, I was certain this portrait held secrets, dark ones. A voice, low and distinct, echoed in my mind. Do not stare too long. What did it mean? I leaned closer, entranced. The princess's expression shifted, her lips curling into a smirk that felt wrong, sinister somehow. Just then, the light flickered, plunging me into deeper shadows. A cold breeze brushed against my neck, sending shivers racing down my spine. I stepped back, heart pounding, then came the noisy loud thud, like something heavy being dropped. I jumped, adrenaline coursing through me. I turned toward the door, but it slammed shut with a force that rattled the walls. My breath quickened. Panic fluttered in my stomach. I turned to face the portrait again, now almost glowing under the dim light. The figure seemed to lean forward, as if urging me to come closer. I froze. Staring at those eyes felt wrong. They looked aware, like they were judging me. Then it happened out of the corner of my eye. I caught movement near the staircase. Something shifted in the shadows. It was tall and dark, lurking just beyond the light. My heart dropped. I opened my mouth to scream, but nothing came out. The tension thickened. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Just as the figure stepped into the faint light, I felt a sharp gust blow through the attic, smothering the room in darkness. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Everything went still. I stood in the total darkness, heart pounding. The presence that had been slinking in the shadows was suddenly gone, swallowed by the encroaching dark. The air clawed at my throat, thick as fog, but I couldn't move. I felt as if I were frozen in place, trapped in the maw of an unseen beast. Then a whisper slithered back into my mind, look. It beckoned me, insidious and soothing all at once. I blinked, summoning the courage to take one trembling step, then another. My fingers reached out, shaking as they brushed against the frame of the portrait. Just as its image returned to clarity, a surge of cold swept through the attic. It was as if a window had burst open, releasing a howling wind that snaked around me, pulling at my clothes and hair. My eyes caught movement again, and I turned, gasping as a figure coalesced in the gloom, a woman, ethereal yet tethered to a shadowy background. Her long hair framed a face that mirrored the princess's in the portrait, but her expression was twisted in sadness, lips trembling as if she waged a silent war against her fate. I blinked hard, trying to reclaim my sanity, but she pointed behind me, her eyes wide and pleading that I spun around, scanning the attic, but the door remained shut, no sign of life save for the lingering coldness. What had she seen? Panic clawed at my chest. "Get out," I gasped, though the words were just a thin whisper. I turned back to the apparition, but she was gone, leaving nothing but the silence of the attic echoing in my ears. Then, my gaze fell upon the portrait again. The prince's smile had widened, the colors shifting ominously, pulsating with a life of their own. In that moment, I felt the entire atmosphere of the attic pressing against me, suffocating. The whispers returned, now layered and clamorous. "Free her. Free us." Instinctively, I took a step back, but the antique trunk in the room caught my foot, sending me sprawling to the floor. The impact jarred loose an old book that had sunk beneath the weight of time. As I picked it up, a chill enveloped me, and my fingers tingled with the electric sensation of dread. The cover was intricately embossed with symbols I couldn't recognize, but the moment I opened it, a wisp of cold air burst forth like a sigh from a long-held breath. The pages were brittle, the ink fading, but I could make out mentions of rituals, sacrifices, and curses. The princess, the shadows she commanded. The last line sent icy fingers skimming along my spine. "When the clock strikes 12, she is free to roam." That I glanced at the clock perched high on the attic wall. The hands were nearing midnight. The sudden realization sent a shockwave of terror through me. Each tick felt like a countdown, a heartbeat drumming in the back of my mind. I needed to flee, yet the portrait held me captive, drawing me back with its malevolent allure. Dread coiled tighter, squeezing until I felt faint. That I stumbled to my feet, the book clutched tightly against my chest. I had to escape. The shadows began to coalesce again, swirling, whispering, pleading. With a scream bubbling in my throat, I lunged toward the door. I yanked at the handle, but the door remained immovable, a solid wall against my desperation. Then I heard Ida's slow, deliberate sound, like a heavy footfall echoing from the shadows behind me. I turned, heart racing, and suddenly, the darkness split open, revealing the tall figure I had glimpsed before. This time, it stepped into the light, revealing not just a silhouette, but a nightmarish visage, the very image of the cursed princess. Her eyes glowed with malevolence, impossibly wide. "You mustn't try to leave. I need you. We need you." The air grew colder, the whispers crescendoing into screams that were almost deafening. My soul screamed back, refusing the pull of her darkness, but the shadows spilled over me, wrapping around my legs and dragging me downward. That I was being pulled into that cursed world, and as I struggled against the force, the last thing I saw was her outstretched hand reaching for mine, her smile twisted in hunger. The clock chimed. The sound of the clock's chime reverberated through the attic, an echo of doom that morphed into a sinister laughter, surrounding me with an oppressive weight. I could barely think, my mind a swirl of dread and images of the woman's twisted smile, the hungry shadows encircling me like a predatory beast. Flailing against the inky tendrils that sought to drag me into the depths of oblivion, I realized the grip was unlike anything I had ever known, a complete and malevolent violation of spirit and flesh. The air thickened, pressing down like a heavy blanket, suffocating. Each gasp came harder than the last, each breath infused with the icy breath of despair. As the shadows pushed me closer to the floor, their ethereal substance seeping into my skin, chilling my very essence. "No. Let me go." My voice came out hoarse, filled with futile resistance against something far greater than I could comprehend. And then, in the midst of the chaos, something caught my eye. To the very left of the portrait, the wall rippled as if made of water, expelling a low, almost sorrowful hum. I instinctively reached toward it, drawn like a moth to flame, compelled by a potion of yearning and fear. The steady flutter of my pulse quickened, the countenance of the princess seemed to writhe in agitation as if she felt the pull of the ancient magic resonating from the wall. That it should have terrified me, but an odd calm washed over my panicking thoughts. Perhaps this wall could serve as my escape. I clawed at the shadows binding my limbs, desperate to move, to escape. Summoning every shred of strength, I lurched toward the wall, each step a battle against the invisible chains that held me prisoner. The moment I reached the glistening surface, my fingers slid through as if the barrier were gelatinous, and I felt a rush of air and lost promises whispering from the other side. I pushed through, and a shock of reality struck. Attic around me warped, dissolved, and then flickered out like a dying ember. I found myself plunged into a different realm, scenting damp earth and stale memories. Before me lay a hauntingly beautiful garden, twisted and wild, yet curiously still. The trees stood tall, their branches contorted as if frozen in mid-cry, their leaves glistening black under a silvery moon that hung heavy in the sky. Delicate, ghostly flowers bloomed around me, luminescent petals shimmering with a soft glow that illuminated the path ahead, but there was something wrong. A dissonance ran through this enchanted landscape, an undercurrent of despair that resonated deeper than the quiet, ethereal beauty suggested. I felt the eyes of the garden upon me, soft and mournful, and I turned abruptly as I became aware of a figure watching from the shadows at the far edge of the garden. It was her, the princess, though the purity in her initial form had been marred by desperation and sorrow. "You should not have come here," she whispered, her voice a silky silken thread that wove through the air. "Time is not on our side, please," I stammered, stepping toward her. "I need to help you. I can free you from this curse." Her smile faltered, sadness overwhelming her features. "You cannot change what has been written. The curse consumes all those who entered, and those who remained." Panic gripped my heart, and as I glanced behind me, the shadows leaked from the wall, creeping into this garden space. They now bore the form of twisted faces, lost souls writhing in agony, reaching toward me with hollow hands. Terror surged, and I felt the ground beneath me begin to tremble. "Join us," the shadows convulsed, their voices a terrifying chorus of wails. "Forever in our beautiful suffering." That I stumbled back, my heart hammering against my ribcage. "No," I gasped, "I won't join you." But the princess stepped forward, and the shadows recoiled from her, as if she were their tormentor. "You must run," she urged desperately, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "They know you are here. You must find the place where the past and present collide." Suddenly, the landscape began to shift, the trees warping unsettlingly as if the garden itself was recoiling from the impending storm. I felt it then, a sinister pulse growing louder as if a heartbeat was emanating from the ground, spinning like a cyclone of despair. "Find the shaded archway," the princess cried, her voice strong yet breaking. "It is your only chance." But before I could scream back a question, the ground lurched violently, and the shadows surged forward, their cries of anguish mixing with the princess's plea into a deafening roar that sent me reeling. I spun around, desperate for direction, as an unseen force gripped my shoulders, drawing me towards a darkness that loomed beyond the garden. With a burst of adrenaline, I ran, my feet pounding against the uneven ground, the whispers of the cursed souls echoing behind me. But as I sprinted, I felt a chill creeping up my spine. A shadow darted at my heels, and I dared not look back. My heart raced, and my breath quickened as an unyielding shadow reached for me, aiming to snatch me into that abyss of suffering. Just as I caught the glimmer of the shaded archway, I heard the princess's haunting voice from behind. "Remember, survive the night or be forever bound." Then, the ground beneath me crumbled, and the horrifying realization screamed through my mind. The shadows were closing in, and I could barely make out the archway's outline, flickering like a beacon of hope amid an ocean of despair. Could I escape, or was I destined to join the cries of the lost? I launched myself toward the archway, ready to gamble everything on a chance of survival. But as I reached for it, a frozen grip snatched my wrist, pulling me back into the shadows. The clock struck 1. The shadows tightened their hold on my wrist, an icy burn that sent tendrils of fear skittering along my spine. I could barely scream, only a choking gasp escaped my lips as the world warped around me. The garden dissolved, replaced by an inky darkness, the once starry sky now a swirling mass of grays and blacks, flickering with otherworldly lights. "Let go!" I cried out, my plea swallowed by the cacophony of laughter echoing around me, dark, sardonic, as if the very night mocked my desperation. The grasping fingers of dread closed tighter, dragging me back, deeper into their sinister fold. My mind raced, memories of the princess flickered through my thoughts, her despair, her warnings as the darkness promised to unveil its own horrific story. "Join us," the whispers cooed, slithering into my ear, a supplication that both seduced and repulsed me. There is beauty in our suffering, but I would not succumb. I fought against the lustrous grip of fear, digging deep for resolve, picturing the princess' haunting gaze, the sadness that lingered there and the urgency behind her words. Fueled by that image, I mustered a burst of strength, wrenching my arm free, a violent twist that sent me tumbling to the ground, shattered but freed, and I stumbled forward, disoriented but determined, toward the flickering glimmer of the archway. It beckoned, a shimmer of life surrounded by suffocating darkness. But even as I sprinted through the inky void, I could feel the shadows coiling around my ankles, bidding me to trip, to fall, to stay and be one with their eternal night. Then, the resonance of the clock echoed once more, a morose toll that underscored the urgency in my frantic heartbeat. Thick shadows gathered, coalescing into a singular form, an immense silhouette that vibrated with malevolence. I dared a glance back, and fear carved my insides. They were no longer just formless wisps. Faces emerged from the darkness, tormented, twisted, and eternally seeking. "Please," I whimpered, eyes wide. "What do you want from me? Your life, your soul," they intoned, a haunting melody of despair, weaving together like a funeral dirge. "You sought to uncover the truth, now you'll learn its price." With renewed panic, I pushed myself harder toward the archway, dodging the tendrils that reached out to pull me into their grasp. But the shadows shifted quickly, an arrow of darkness aimed directly at my heart. As I closed in on the archway, a seething portal of oppressive energy, I faced the doppelganger of my own self, twisted and pale, a reflection of everything I feared, the embodiment of the darkness that beckoned. "You can't escape, this is who you are." The specter hissed, its voice a taunt infused with pain and hunger. "You will be like us." "No." The scream ripped from my throat, fierce and raw, drowning out the echoing toll of the clock that thundered in my ears. "I am not one of you." With one final surge of determination, I lunged for the archway, thrusting my hand toward the pulsing energy seeping from its margins. My fingers barely grazed the surface when a blinding light enveloped me, the world exploding into a kaleidoscope of color, a clash of realities fighting for dominance, and then, everything fell silent. That I awoke on the ground, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and decay. Before me stretched the garden, twisted yet somehow familiar, held captive in an unending twilight. The clock's chime echoed again, lingering ominously, reverberating around me, but nothing moved. Silence reigned, the air weaving an eerie stillness. Cautiously, I rose to my feet, glancing back at the archway, but it had vanished as if it were a mere figment of a restless dream. The shadows remained, lurking just beyond the perimeter of the garden, their presence a deafening whisper of dread that echoed in my mind. I searched desperately for the princess, my heart pounding with unrelenting hope. "Princess," I called, embracing the oppressive silence as my only companion. "Where are you?" In the distance, I saw something shifting. The silvery glow of the moon illuminated a figure seated upon a gnarled tree stump. A melancholic silhouette that moved with an otherworldly grace, head bowed, trembling with sorrow. Every instinct urged me forward, electricity of dread cracking through the stillness, gnawing at my resolve. Slowly, the figure raised her head, and my breath caught. It was the princess, but her eyes were hollow, void of hope, consumed by an infinite longing that crushed my spirit. "Now you see," she whispered, her voice a haunting balm that soothed the very shadows surrounding me. "Now you understand what it means to be bound." Before I could form a response, the air shifted again, and my heart dropped. Slowly, an army of twisted apparitions merged from the shadows, all eyes focused on me, hungry and relentless. The atmosphere vibrated with their energy, and I felt my resolve begin to fracture. "Soon, the curse will awaken," the princess warned, her eyes now flickering with an unsettling unity with the shadows. "And when it does, it will take everything from you." Panic seized me in a crushing grip, and my mind raced around my dwindling options. What can I do? A chilling silence enveloped the garden, and then she smiled a ghostly, knowing smile that sent shivers down my spine. "Find the truth." But before I could ask what truth she spoke of, the shadows surged forward, their laughter mixing with the cries of the lost, echoing in a cacophony of despair, a relentless tide ready to consume everything in their path. My heart raced as I leaped back. The darkness closed in, and I felt the vice of inevitability around me. In that moment, I realized just how fragile my grasp on my own fate had become, and then, everything went dark. I stumbled through the void, suspended in an all-consuming turmoil where the light of reason faltered and shadows rippled like the surface of a disturbed lake. Just as despair threatened to drag me into its depths, echoes of distant laughter sliced through the silence. It was guttural, echoing, a chorus of tormented souls who had surrendered to the darkness I had been trying to escape. As the pitch-black void began to wane, shapes emerged, swirling and mingling around me like the remnants of an ancient storm, each figure a grotesque blend of familiar and forgotten. They reached for me with fragile hands, their faces shifting, merging into those of the princess and others long-lost friends and strangers alike, all warped by the unholy spell that wreathed the garden in its grip. "Come closer," the figures whispered, their voices sinister and sweet, weaving in and out of my consciousness. "Join us, join our secrets." The pull was intoxicating, a heady mix of fear and curiosity. Could they lead me to the truth? I hesitated, teetering on the edge of that abyss, my heart thundering against my ribcage like a trapped creature. But a flicker of resolve ignited within me, urging me to fight back and reclaim my sense of self from their grasp. "Leave me be!" I cried, my voice choked with an urgency that ignited even a deeper dread within the shadows. "You're nothing but echoes." At that moment, an otherworldly silence followed my declaration, a potent imbalance that stained the atmosphere. The figures recoiled, their features twisting into masks of rage. "You think you know us?" The chorus rose with a fury that was palpable, each syllable echoing like thunder, vibrating through the soil beneath me. In their turmoil, the shadows around me grew denser, pulsating, swirling in a collective frenzy. It felt as though I were stealing a glimpse into memories trapped beneath layers of darkness. A painstaking collage of magnificence turned macabre. Amongst the shifting forms, the princess remained, now dressed in a gown sewn with the darkness itself. "This is a prison and a sanctuary," she whispered, each syllable glistening with despair. "Only when they subsume you will you truly comprehend." No. I shouted back, searching through mounting fear for the conviction to escape this wretched fate, to uncover the secret that lay at the heart of the curse. "Tell me the truth. Show me what you're hiding." Another round of laughter erupted from the figures behind her, reverberating like wind through skeletal trees. One by one, they began to fade, their cruel mirth replaced by a profound sorrow that ached in the marrow of my bones. The princess, however, lingered, her form flickering like the last light of a dying star. "Child, you are already entangled, but you still possess the strength. You must withstand." Her voice was almost soothing, yet I felt a creeping sludge of despair settle in my heart. "No one escapes unscathed. But seek the room of portraits, there lies the answer." With that vague direction, her form began to dissolve into a mist of nightmares, a spectral hint of what once was. I knew she paraphrased something more, something that would unveil the depth of suffering beneath the artistry of those painted walls, something about the shame and degradation of history that tethered the garden in eternal twilight. Just then, the earth trembled violently beneath me. The shadows roared, their cacophony growing into a storm that seemed bent on swallowing the very fabric of my existence. "You cannot escape!" they cried in unison, their voices swirling like a cyclone that swept the air from my lungs. Suddenly, a blinding flash illuminated the garden, the intense light contrasting starkly against the encroaching darkness. My vision cleared an ethereal shimmer, a doorway materialized at the edge of the trees, pulsating with vibrant energy. The figures melted back into the shadows, their despair transformed into a single, intent hunger directed at me. Without a second thought, I darted toward the doorway, the weight of the curse clawing at my back like relentless fingers. The ground beneath surged, eager to reclaim me, yearning to drag me into its suffocating embrace. Just as I reached for the glinting edge of the portal, a tendril of shadow clasped around my ankle, yanking me down with ferocity. As I fell, I saw the faces of the figures, their expressions a grotesque tapestry of longing and malice, each mouth mouthing unutterable words that echoed like cursed incantations. "Awaken the curse, let the truth be told." Just as my fingers began to slip from the portal's threshold, I felt an unshakable surge of desperation clothe my resolve, tearing away from the depths of darkness that sought to ensnare me and drag me back to despair. But in that moment, as the shadows erupted toward me with force, I saw the starlight flicker, the shifting, vibrant forms of the portraits swarming and entangling within the doorway. Then, darkness swallowed everything. The last thing I heard, before all-consuming silence, was a fractured voice echoing through the void, a whisper that chilled my heart, "Come find your truth." In that chilling uncertainty, the shadows consumed me, for I did not yet know I was already part of the curse. I awoke on the cold, damp floor of a narrow stone chamber, the scent of decay clinging to the air like a predatory beast. The remnants of shadow whispered at the edges of my vision, teasing the corners of my awareness. A distant drip echoed, marking the rhythm of dread that enveloped me. The walls were adorned with tarnished metallic frames, each encasing portraits of languid figures staring with lifeless eyes as if caught in a moment of torment. "Where am I?" I muttered, pushing myself up, my hands grazing the icy surface beneath me. I was sure I had been consumed by shadows, yet here I was unsure whether I had returned from an ephemeral dream or if this was something far worse. As my senses adjusted, the flickering remnants of light teetering from a single torch revealed a corridor that branched out before me. The walls seemed to shift with every heartbeat, an illusion of movement that suggested the confines of the room were alive, ensconced in their own despair. "Seek the truth," I remembered the princess repeating in my mind. The urgency felt stronger than ever. I struggled to stand, my legs shaky, while the painted faces bore witness to my every motion, their eyes following me with an intense, unsettling awareness that I steeled myself and stepped forward, the floor damp and uneven beneath my feet, a soft squelch accompanying every cautious tread. Corroded sconces adorned the walls, remnants of flame once brimming with life now mere skeletons of existence. Each flickering shadow leapt forward in rhythmic sync with my heart, taunting me to succumb to the dread roiling within. As I advanced deeper into the chamber, portraits began to take on a more disconcerting quality. At first, the painted smiles turned into grimaces, the vibrant hues of their clothes morphed into muted shadows that seemed to seep from within the frames. The figures shifted slowly. Proud nobles, maidens in exquisite gowns, and aged men with flowing beards stared with eyes that bore centuries of war and sorrow. Suddenly, a portrait of a young woman caught my eye. Her face was ethereal, beautiful yet shadowed, with hair cascading like waves of ink around her delicate shoulders. In her painted gaze, an undeniable longing radiated, an intense sadness that pulled at something deep in my core. I approached her, the air thickening with acrid apprehension. "Help me," a voice whispered, soft yet unmistakable, as the atmosphere around me grew thick with unease. I peered closer, her painted lips quivered almost imperceptibly. Fascination intertwined with fear as I realized I was standing before the very essence of the princess. "What is your truth?" I whispered back, my voice barely rising above the oppressive silence that suffocated the chamber. The moment my words faded, the room darkened abruptly, the flame of the torch barely casting a glow, flickering like the last breath of a dying star. The walls seemed to pulse, resonating with a low hum that vibrated through my bones, an ancient melody of lamentation that transcended time. "Look deeper," the young woman's voice echoed again, more fragmented now, a jarring harmony with the growing rumble that shook the very foundation of the chamber. "You must see the cursed legacy. Become what you choose to unravel." A spectral wind rushed past, threatening to extinguish the flame, and shadows twisted violently around me, a cacophony of whispers filling the room. I staggered back, overwhelmed by the weight of their anguished cries, the portraits twisting and writhing as if trying to break free from their canvas prison. "Free us! Release us!" they cried, their voices merging, a horrid symphony that mirrored my mounting terror. With every moment that passed, the darkness thickened, drawing me in, an ocean of despair. I needed to escape, yet the prince's pleading gaze anchored me in place. I felt an irresistible magnetic pull as if the truth that had eluded me was entangled within her very essence. My heart raced, caught in the tempest of emotions swirling around me. Grief, anger, desperation. Another portrait beside her began to crack, the surface splintering like ice under the weight of winter's touch. A visage of a man, wild-eyed and filled with fury, broke through the once pristine canvas, his expression one of madness clawing for release. "Find me!" he bellowed in a guttural roar, his tortured face slipping further, his sanity unraveling. "Bring back the light." No longer merely an observer, I was locked in this dance of the tormented, the curse binding me to this haunted place. Realization washed over Meth's shadows were not just remnants of the past, they were echoes of what would come to be. An unseen force pulled at my very soul, dark tendrils wrapping around my limbs, threatening to ensnare me as the portraits cried out, their voices merging into one horrific echo. Desperation surged within, and I screamed into the tumultuous madness, "What do you want from me?" In that instant, everything fell silent. The portraits halted mid-movement, as if time itself had imploded into stillness. The girl's eyes widened, shimmering with an intensity that pierced through the darkness surrounding us. "All will be revealed," she murmured, her voice a haunting whisper as the shadows coiled tightly around me, gnashing like wolves eager for their prey. The walls began to shift and twist, the corridor expanding, collapsing, folding in upon itself, a cruel labyrinth, and then a sound shattered the stillness, a slow, deliberate crawling echo, footsteps returning, heralding a figure cloaked in darkness, emerging from the depths of despair. "Time to embrace your heritage," the figure intoned, each syllable punctuated by the sinister rush of ash that pervaded the air. My heart stopped as recognition flickered like a dying candle. The past was collapsing upon me, and the truth I sought was tangled within a web of horrors unimagined. That I braced myself, knowing that the unveiling of the curse would come at a staggering price. This was not merely a moment of revelation, it was the beginning of the end. As the figure's hollow laughter echoed off the walls, sealing my fate in a cacophony of nightmares, I gasped, realizing I had already crossed the threshold into madness itself. And then, darkness claimed me once more. I gasped, feeling the air thicken, stifling my breath as the shadows coalesced and surged around me. The figure cloaked in darkness loomed larger, its eyes glowing with a malevolence that pierced through the suffocating void. I stumbled backward, searching for an escape, but the walls gripped me tighter than a spider's web, ensnaring me in its anguished embrace. "Do you think you can turn away from your lineage?" It laughed, that chilling sound echoing off the stone walls, reverberating through my very bones. "The truth is your blood, and it courses through you like poison." The young princess's portrait shimmered, and for a fleeting moment, her expression changed from sorrow to fierce determination. "You have the strength to counter this dark legacy," she urged, but her voice was drowned out by the beastly laugh that followed. With every word uttered by the cloaked figure, memories fractured and disjointed flashed before my eyes. Images of regal banquets, vibrant gowns spun from moon silk, and the hallowed halls of a kingdom now submerged in despair. But mingled within those memories was the chaotic frenzy of madness, a curse woven into the very fabric of my bloodline, a warning whispered through generations, yet silenced before the truth's dance could begin. "What have I become?" I cried, my voice trembling, a mere echo in this macabre theater of suffering. Heir to the horrors, the figure spoke, moving closer, shadows cascading like smoke from its form. Its face was shrouded, an obscured visage, but the stench of burnt flesh and despair hung festering in the air. "Embrace what you are destined to find. You cannot evade the past. You must uncover the secrets buried deep within." Secrets. I barely managed, reminded of the portraits watching. They seemed to nod in unison, the anguish in their painted eyes pleading for release, twisting in their frames, yearning for liberation from the torment that bound them. The dark figure raised a skeletal hand, and the chamber shifted again, the walls pulsating like a heart, the shadows swirling into a vortex, coiling with energy. "Listen to their cries, they yearn for the truth. It must be unearthed, or darkness will consume all." Before I could react, a gust of wind howled through the corridor, the temperature dropping abruptly. I shivered, the shadows now swirling hungrily, trying to engulf me once more. It was a tidal wave of darkness, threatening to consume the light, to dissolve all sanity within its maw. Suddenly, the eyes of the portraits flared with a feverish intensity. The young princess, the embodiment of sorrow and beauty, opened her mouth wide as if to protest, but her voice was lost to the clamor of the darkness closing in around me. "Release them!" I yelled, feeling the weight of despair crash upon my shoulders. "What must I do?" "Find the mirror," the figure replied, its voice laced with the rasp of impending doom. "In the depths of this shadowed castle lies the truth you seek, hidden behind glass, a reflection of your core." "Where?" I shouted, the shadows now clawing at the edges of my vision, a desperate rush of panic swelling within my chest. "Beneath the throne," it hissed, each word dripping with a venom that curled around my thoughts, wrapping tightly, leaving no room for doubt. Seek it before the witching hour, or you shall be lost to the echoes of this cursed lineage. The ground trembled as the resonant echo of heavy footsteps approached from the darkened expanse. I glanced behind, dread coiling around my heart. There were more shadows creeping toward me, their forms solidifying into anguished figures that crept closer with each agonizing heartbeat. Panic surged anew as I spun back to confront the cloaked figure. What if I can't find it? What will happen? It will embrace you, and you will become what you truly fear, it replied, its laugh morphing into a wicked, dissonant choir. At that moment, I turned to run, the portraits screaming now, their voices merging into one wild, desperate chorus. Reclaim the light. Escape before it's too late. I stumbled into the corridor, each step echoing the urgent thumps of my heart. The walls trembled, shadows reaching out with claw-like hands, dragging at my ankles. I felt their breath, an icy caress tickling my skin, urging me, warning me. As I sprinted, I was oblivious to the paint peeling from the walls, revealing a colliginous dread lurking beneath the remnants of souls once vibrant. I ran past flickering torches, their flames dancing wildly as if in protest against the encroaching darkness, and then, through the maelstrom of emotions swirling around me, a chilling realization hit. The dark figure wasn't the only curse I carried, its laughter echoed in my own bloodline, a reminder of the chaos that connected us all. With each desperate stride, I approached a massive door, ornately carved and pulsing with a power that sent shivers racing down my spine. An overwhelming final burst of strength fueled my steps, intuition hazed with hesitation compelled me to halt before it. The threshold felt alive, the air thickening with anticipation, but just as I raised my hand to push it open, a scream shattered the silence. A deafening cry filled with torment echoed from behind me. I spun around, heart racing, eyes wide. In the flickering light of the torches, I saw them, the portraits, now free of their frames, stepping into the world of flesh, pale and elongated, bearing visages twisted by despair. Their mouths opened, wails erupting from the depths of their souls, mourning the legacy we were both part of. As the first figure lunged toward me, fingers like brittle branches aimed to grasp my being, I screamed, realizing too late that the darkness craved my acceptance. The true horror awaited beyond the door, and I had to make a choice: face the legacy that bound me or succumb to the shadows that hungered for my soul. And in that moment, I knew, the real nightmare had just begun. The chill that enveloped me was almost sentient, heavy with the lamentations of ages past. The portraits, once frozen in time, now lurched and twisted like grotesque marionettes, their expressions filled with agony, and it felt as if they were drawing power from the darkness surrounding us, becoming more real with each shriek that severed the stillness. I took a step back, but the ornate door behind me seemed to loom larger, a sentinel to untold horrors. Flee. The wispy figure of the princess from the portrait cried as her flickering image began to dissolve into the ether, vanishing from sight as if the very shadows consumed her. If you do not face the truth now, it will swallow you whole. Stop. I screamed, but the figures merely advanced, shambling forward in a cacophony of anguish. I felt the walls pulse with a dreadful heartbeat, suffocatingly enclosing the space around me. Each cry reverberated through my bones, igniting every fiber in my being with fear. One of the apparitions lunged, its feet scraping against the stone floor, leaving a trail of ichor that smelled of decay. Your strength comes from us, it hissed, making grotesque hand gestures as it bore down on me. We are woven into the tapestry of your fate. Desperation clawed at my throat as I glanced back at the door. The apprehension was palpable, it throbbed as if alive, a gateway shivering with the promise of dark revelations. Could I really uncover the mirror's truth beneath the throne, or were the whispers I'd heard merely luring me toward my own demise? Go back. The princess shouted, her visage flickering back into existence, desperately trying to reach me through the chaos. Her voice seemed to blend with that of the anguished spirits, forming a haunting symphony, a juxtaposition of hope and doom. You must break the curse or be consumed by it. I turned, torn between the wretched souls of my ancestors and the door that beckoned like a siren's wail. With an inhuman shriek, the first figure seized me, dragging me towards the darkness. Its fingers felt icy and reassuring, seams of pain flooding my senses, but before I succumbed entirely, the memory of my family's legacy pierced through the haze. In the depths lies freedom, in the depths lies fear, I murmured, channeling the weight of my ancestors' sorrow. To find myself, I must confront you. With a newfound resolve, I broke free from its grasp, my mind racing as I pushed against the tide of moaning figures. The door felt hot against my palm, rippling with unseen energy, so I lunged toward it, throwing it wide open despite the anguished screams crowning my name. The room beyond engulfed me in darkness. I staggered inside, gasping as the threshold closed behind me with a heavy thud, sealing the wailing souls from my sight and momentarily muffling their cries. The air was thick here, swirling with resignation and a scent that promised despair. Shadows shifted like spectral tendrils above, and I could make out the silhouettes of ancient tapestries, each depicting scenes of regal lineage marred by conflict and sorrow. My breath hitched as my gaze landed on the throne at the center of the room, grand yet ominous, adorned with remnants of shattered crowns and dust from ages forgotten. That I must find the mirror, I whispered, taking hesitant steps into the dark embrace of the chamber. Each footfall echoed, a reminder of the silence that had succumbed to memory. I felt the shadows pulse with expectation, a growing magnetism that drew me deeper as I reached the throne. A chill swept through the room as I crouched, searching beneath the massive seat. My fingers brushed against something cold and smooth, an oblong shape half buried in the rubble. As I pulled it free, the atmosphere shifted violently, the echoes of long-forgotten laughter and cries crescendoed like a storm brewing overhead. The mirror. I thought, my heart racing in tandem with the commotion. I held it aloft, gasping at the images swirling within its surface, visions of my lineage, replete with anguish, regret, and torment. But even more poignantly, I saw myself reflected back, yet not as I was, a visage twisted and malformed, the traits of my ancestors starkly imprinted upon me, thrumming with dark promise. Before I could comprehend the entirety of the vision, an icy hand suddenly gripped my wrist, yanking me backward with an unnatural force. I stumbled, the mirror teetering at the brink of crashing to the ground. Panic surged through me. If it shattered, what would remain? Stop. Release me. I struggled against the grip, but another shadow, opalescent and unfurling like smoke, slithered around my frame. I turned my head, my breath hitching, my pulse pounding, for what I saw sent waves of terror cascading through me. A much taller, more grotesque figure coiled behind me, a marrying of all the tortured souls, their eyes blazing with desperation, mouths locked in a soundless scream as they merged into one single horror. Embrace your gift, it growled, as shadows warped into wicked laughter. Or be consumed whole. Heart racing, I locked eyes with my own reflection. Time seemed to suspend as realities collided. The truth was almost within reach, shards of my lineage swirling in that accursed glass. But the hand tightened, pulling me deeper into the void of cursed blood and aching souls. That I had a choice. I could embrace the darkness or break free. Yet as the shadows pulled tighter, threatening to consume me entirely, the mirror shimmered, and the truth whispered from its depths. That I, and the next instant, everything around me shattered into chaos, and I felt myself slipping from reality, surrendering to fate's harrowing grasp. That I screamed but was swallowed by nothingness, unmoored from all that I had fought for. Tendrils of shadow enveloped me, tugging at the very fabric of my essence. Then came a voice, clear and commanding, resonating through the cacophony, a warning that shattered the night. Time is not on your side, blood of my blood, it whispered with a dreadful finality, a presence I could not see but felt suffocating me while revealing the heavy truth of a legacy, that in every reflection, the wicked specter of history awaits its reckoning. And in the creeping blackness, I knew, a revelation would soon emerge, one dreadful and unforgiving, threading my beginning to its end. The darkness consumed me, and I felt my senses unravel, spiraling down into an abyss wrought with lost anguish. My heart thundered in my chest, each beat echoing against the walls of the endless void that cradled me. There was a stillness and unsettling quiet that seemed to seep into my very soul. I clawed at the emptiness, straining to find any surface against which I might ground myself. Suddenly, rays of light pierced through the darkness, illuminating the edges of a shrouded scene. I struggled to my feet, half expecting to find myself in another forsaken chamber or back in the haunting presence of the throne room. Instead, I stood in a vast, mist-laden garden, illuminated by an eerie twilight. The air was thick with the scent of wilted flowers and decay, creating an oppressive atmosphere that stung at my throat. Help! A soft voice floated past me, gilded with a deep, melodic sorrow that danced like smoke around my thoughts. I turned, searching for its source, but found only twisted vines and spectral blooms that shivered with unseen emotions. The remnants of a graveyard hugged the periphery, headstones jutting from the earth like tortured souls pulling themselves toward the light. "Who's there?" My voice quavered, swallowed by the haunting silence. The garden felt alive, aware of my presence, as if whispering secrets hidden in time. "Come closer," the voice beckoned again, frayed yet insistent. My pulse quickened. I edged past a cluster of gnarled roses, their thorny vines curling toward my skin like dark jealous fingers. As I moved deeper into the thickening atmosphere, shadows flickered around me, hinting at forms neither summoned nor revealed that I approached the farthest edge of the garden, where a gleaming figure bathed in ethereal light stood beside an ancient stone well. It was a woman, her long flowing gown adorned with the same colors of betrayal I had glimpsed in the mirror, deep crimson and midnight blues that swirled ominously around her like the churning of an unquiet sea. Her alabaster skin glowed with an otherworldly sheen, yet her eyes were filled with a tempest of anguish, as she slowly gazed upon me. You must listen," she said, her voice like fragile glass threatening to shatter. "I am cursed, just like you. We share this lineage, bound by blood and curse. Who are you?" I asked, barely maintaining a grip on my own sanity. My heart was now echoing a new rhythm, one of dread that unfurled like the dawn over this cursed domain. That I was the last to wear the crown, she recounted, her smile bittersweet, before the lineage fell into despair. "I am Princess Amara, marked by betrayal and agony, forever trapped in the shadows of our forebears." Images inundated my mind, the portraits, the screams, the wails. "What do you mean by trapped?" "The others, the spirits haunting your step, they seek not revenge but release. They yearn for a reckoning against the king, against Henry." Her voice trembled, resonating with dread. "He draped himself in power that day, sealing our fate with his cruelty." I moved closer, entranced by her haunting beauty, yet repulsed by the blood that connected us. "What happened to you? My story echoes in the rain." She paused, her voice barely higher than a whisper, as her hollow gaze wandered to the graveyard. "In the depths of love twisted by ambition lies a truth more horrifying than any portrait could capture. Your blood carries the weight of our tragedies, the shackles of our lives. But the mirror." Her expression shifted from despair to urgency. "It will help you to confront the darkness. Take the shards of our suffering and let them bloom into understanding before it's too late." At that moment, the garden trembled, the ground quaking underfoot as scaffolds of despair began to rise from the earth. Shadows darted from the well, coiling like serpents, and a cacophony of wails erupted from the graves, an unearthly lament that chilled my marrow. But before I could ask, Amara's expression shifted to alarm, her voice sharp. "You must go. They are coming for you." "What? Who's coming?" With a swift gesture, she waved her hand. And the air vibrated with chaotic energy. Suddenly, dark forms burst forth, entities entwined with anguish, faces I recognized from the throne room thrusting into existence around me, their mouths open in silent cries for release. "Your time is nearing." A hollow voice intoned, unraveling the garden and summoning forth the mournful essences. "We demand stop." I shouted, desperate, but their agonized wails reverberated through my bones, intensifying, drowning out my reason. The walls of the garden began to vibrate as the boundaries of reality waned, threatening to collapse altogether. "Hold fast to our truth." Amara's silhouette began to fracture, her form flickering like a candle in a storm. "The reflection shows more than just what lies ahead, it reveals us. Find it, before madness consumes you." And suddenly, she was gone, a fleeting vision swallowed by shadows as I was thrust back through a tunnel of darkness. I felt the gritty walls clawing at my skin, tugging me toward an unyielding light. When I emerged, gasping, back in that dimly lit chamber where the throne loomed before me, dread pooled in my gut. The air buzzed and crackled with the energy of the spirits, their wails echoing as the mirror lay shattered at my feet, fragments glimmering with fractured echoes of a lineage I could only begin to fathom. And as I stared down, the ground began to tremble anew, a rumbling prophecy heralding a final reckoning. Before I could react, hands burst forth from the shadows, grasping my ankles, pulling me deeper into the earth's relentless embrace. Your choice is nigh, blood of the cursed, the hollow voices chorused, as the room began to bleed into shadows, merging with the specters of all who had come before me, ambassadors of my fate. Would I embrace the darkness? Or would I break free? In that chaotic swirl of emotions, I felt time unravel, as the weight of my destiny crushed down upon me, and in a flash, as the shadows threatened to enfold me completely, the truth glimmered on the shards at my feet, a reflection of all my ancestors' sins and my own. But then, a new voice emerged from the chaos, crystal clear, resonating like a clarion call. The mirror holds the answer you seek, but beware, for it may also contain your undoing. And with that, a scream erupted from my throat as the world snapped away, leaving only the darkness to answer my fate. The power behind the echoes receded as I found myself standing before those shattered pieces of the mirror. Each fragment caught the dim light and reflected a myriad of emotions: horror, despair, and a tinge of something unsettlingly beautiful. I felt the pull of every broken soul anchoring me, blurring the boundaries between our existences. Knowing what I now held within the palm of my hands was pivotal to unraveling the curse that had chained my lineage for generations. That I knelt slowly, teetering on the precipice of madness, and picked up a shard, its edge glinting perilously. Suddenly, time slipped away, replaced by visions racing through my mind. I saw myself dressed as royalty, seated on a throne that occupied a profound void, a paradox of torment veiled in splendor. I was a part of the very darkness I had tried so desperately to flee. Images of betrayal flickered before me, moments when loyalty twisted into deception, shades of ambition carving away the innocence we once held dear. I saw Henry, eyes ablaze with power, laughing cruelly as shadows encircled him, enchanting yet malignant. The reflection caught fiery shards of red as I realized that it was not just the curse that bound my ancestors to this curse, but the visceral, toxic heritage of their decisions, each embrace of darkness unraveling my spirit and tightening my grasp on despair. When the clock strikes 12, she is free to roam, I remembered, the cryptic words clawing back into my thoughts. Left unchecked, this curse would claim me, swallow my light, and offer nothing but torment in return. Amara, I whispered, her name flooding my thoughts anew. Each shard of glass glimmered with her lament, her sacrifice. Do I stand condemned, or can I redeem us all? Suddenly, the walls of the chamber pulsed violently, shadows racing toward me like feral beasts. I hefted the shards, dread cementing my spine, as icy whispers slithered through the air around me. You cannot escape, they shrieked. You belong to us. With every ounce of strength I summoned, I hurled the shards toward the dark, moldering canvas of shadows. Release us! I shouted, my voice resonating with the reminder of all the lost souls entwined with this lineage, a unified plea echoing across the veil of reality. The shards broke through the threshold, and instantly, brilliant light erupted, illuminating every corner of the chamber and driving back the shadows, which recoiled and writhed as if physically hurt. No! The voices screamed, their cries twisting painfully as they convulsed in the glow. You do not belong to the light. But as the ring of light expanded, I saw faces emerging from the chaos, visages twisted with regret, sorrow in their depths. Among them, I spotted the princess, standing severed from the darkness, eyes gleaming fiercely with newfound hope. You carry our legacy. It is time to reclaim our purity. She urged, her voice soaring above the clamor of despair, and as the illumination surged, I felt waves of adrenaline electrifying my veins. I closed my eyes momentarily and embraced the histories swirling within meth anguish, the hope, every fragment articulated as one singular truth. The moment revelation flooded my senses, the shadows screamed louder, desperate voices merging into one cacophony. You cannot stand against your fate, blood of the cursed. But it didn't matter, I could feel the strength of the princess's spirit pushing through, her essence intertwining with mine. Make your choice. She screamed, driving me forward. Turn to the mirror and reveal the true reflection. Accept what is yours. My heart thundered as I gripped the last unbroken shard, raising it to my face. The moment my fingertips grazed its cool glassy surface, the world around me melted away, and I was plunged into a swirling vortex of memories. I stood before both my ancestors and the wretched souls of the past. This is your reckoning, I murmured into the tempest, together, let us break free. As I held up the shard, I saw it evolve, colors unfurling, light coiling around it, and I glimpsed the culmination of our struggles reflected within. I saw Henry, rage curling around him, his hand outstretched towards our bloodline, twisted and anguished. We will not be your puppets any longer, I cried, and a fierce surge built around me like an inferno. In that electrifying moment of clarity, I hurled the shard through the encroaching shadows, and with a final piercing scream, I broke through the veil of my pasta, blinding explosion of light scattering the shadows like ashes in the wind. Each wailing soul was freed, their essences rising into luminescence where they once knew torment. The darkness screamed to be unshackled, but its power waned with each soul freed, yet as silence enveloped the remnants of despair, a singular thought pierced through the residual glow, echoing dreadfully in my mind. All this time, I had merely been an agent of the curse. The real evil lay not within the boundaries of our lineage but within the choices that fed it. Even amidst the freedom, a shiver ran down my spine. It was then I understood. I had broken the chains binding my ancestors, but their memories, their fears, the sins woven into the fabric of my being still lingered, freshly unfurling like a malevolent flower in my heart. That I stepped back onto the earth bathed in fading twilight, panting from the ascension but haunted by the realization of what remained. Yes, I had freed the souls trailing behind me, but now I alone bore their legacy. The darkness woven through my very essence, whispering, teasing me, promising that I could still succumb, that the night was never truly vanquished. The final pulse of the heart echoing throughout the garden faded into a silence that felt heavy and alive. In the stillness, I sensed its shadows that had been banished briefly returned, slithering like smoke around my ankles, inviting me back into their embrace with promises swirling like sweet poison, and in that chilling moment, I realized with horror that the cycle had not ended, it had merely transformed. I was caught in a delicate balance between light and shadow, their inexorable dance guiding me deeper into a darkness that coiled eagerly within. Until that very moment, I had thought the curse broken, but I could feel its seductive pull still lingering, waiting patiently, and as I turned from the remnants of that haunted place, the truth echoed hauntingly in my mind, as chilling as the winds howling through the shadows that tailed me. You may have freed them, but the true curse of this lineage is far from broken. There's blood on your hands, dear one, embrace it.